India has got its fourth coronavirus vaccine. Cipla has got the drug controller's nod to import the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine for restricted emergency use in India. At the Health Ministry press conference, Dr. V.K. Paul has said that only a regulatory clearance has been given to Moderna right now, and the issue of indemnity, remember, which is the legal shield that vaccines like Pfizer and Moderna are demanding before they come into India, is something that is still being addressed. Cipla has filed an application regarding permission for emergency use on Monday, and this was of course referred to the drug controller notice, stating that if a vaccine is approved by the US FDA for emergency use authorization, then the vaccine can be granted marketing authorization without a bridging trial in India. So this is, remember, the significant development. As per the new rules and regulations that have been laid down, no bridging trial is needed. So essentially a vaccine that is approved by the US FDA, in this case Moderna, which is approved, was granted emergency use authorization within 24 hours of submitting that letter to the drug controller. Now, data of the first 100 beneficiaries of this vaccine in India will be submitted before rolling out an immunization program. So that data will be submitted to the DCGI. Now, Moderna, remember, is said to be 90% effective against COVID-19. It is a vaccine which is based on the mRNA technology. India doesn't yet have any mRNA technology vaccines. These vaccines are meant to be safe, efficacious, and can easily be tweaked to respond to variants of coronavirus. So it is an extremely important development that has taken place. But addressing logistical concerns, and this is really the big concern with vaccines like Pfizer and Moderna, the government has issued two important clarifications. One, that this vaccine can be stored and transported at -15 to -20 degrees. But crucially, the government's also clarified that the unopened vial of Moderna can be kept for 30 days at 2 to 8 degrees. Remember, the vaccines in India currently, whether it is Covishield, Covaxin or Sputnik, are all being stored at 2 to 8 degrees. What has the government said about Moderna? That an unopened vial of the Moderna vaccine can be kept for a period of 30 days at 2 to 8 degrees. So this is a very crucial development that has come in at the moment. Moderna, they're getting a nod for emergency use authorization in India. We don't at this point have clarity on when the vaccine and how many doses of the vaccine will be made available to India. But let's listen in to what Dr. V.K. Paul said on India's fourth vaccine.
An application received from Moderna through an Indian subsidiary, Indian partner of theirs, namely Cipla, has been granted new drug permission for restricted use, which is commonly known as emergency use authorization. So new drug permission has been granted to Moderna. This is the first internationally developed vaccine for which now such permission exists today. And as I said, this new drug permission for restricted use. So now there are 4 vaccines with such licensure: Covaxin, Covishield, Sputnik and Moderna.
Let's go right across to Sukirti, who's been tracking the details of this story. Sukirti, a fourth vaccine there getting emergency use authorization in India. What we don't know so far is when Moderna will actually be made available and how many doses of it will be made available.
Well, yes, Rishika, that is definitely something that one would need clarity on, because of this entire issue of vaccine supply being a big controversy in India, with several state governments pointing out that they constantly keep running out of supplies. They have to shut down vaccination centers, many of them even urging the center to take control of larger proportion of the vaccine allocation and not let the private sector take away 25%. So that is why the numbers were crucial. However, at this point of time, the Health Ministry is saying that the most important part was clearing a pathway for them, and that approval has been given. From our end, it is approved that this is an effective vaccine and Cipla is allowed to import it to India. However, they are yet to give more clarity on how many doses will be arriving and by what timelines. However, there is clarity from the ministry's end, from what we are learning from our sources, that this is for both commercial as well as donated vaccines. So whichever path that Cipla chooses. It can be brought commercially or through donated vaccines. All of it is allowed, but the more granular data on how many doses will be arriving by what time, at least from the ministry's end, that is not being revealed. We will of course be trying Cipla officials as well on what are the numbers looking like at this point of time, and what are the kind of agreements that they are making. Those will bring more clarity, but definitely at least the basics in terms of approvals and also the storage situation has been clarified by the government by saying that at least an unopened vial can be kept at 2 to 8 degrees for a period of 1 month. But in the unopened scenario, it does need to be in a temperature of in an open, if the vial has been opened, minus 20 degrees is almost the temperature that these vials would need. So refrigeration conditions definitely a challenge at this point of time, but the government seeming more reassured at this point of time because of that 1 month duration that the vials can be kept in an unopened situation at 2 to 8 degrees, which is in line for with the other 3 vaccines that are being used in India at this point of time. So Moderna, set to be the 4th vaccine for India, is going to definitely boost up the numbers, but by what extent, that clarity is still awaited.
Yes, if an open vial can actually be kept in that 2 to 8 degrees for a period of a month, then that makes the logistics of Moderna, which otherwise needs minus 15 to minus 20 degrees Celsius storage, it actually makes it viable. But before we let you go, a very quick comment on the process. We're given to understand, Sukirti, and you've been reporting on this, that this approval has essentially been happened in 24 hours. That does mean that the process for emergency use authorization for a vaccine that's been approved, say in this case by the US FDA, has gotten pretty streamlined.
Well, yes, that absolutely is a big change from the kind of procedures that we were seeing in the last few months. If you just take the example of Sputnik V, it took about 2 months for it to get an approval in India, despite the fact that the trials were also conducted here by Dr. Reddy's. So all of those data was already here, but despite that, from the date of application and the date of an approval, it was a period of 2 months that was taken. Here in this case, in the case of Moderna, it has taken barely 24 hours, and we already have an official word from the Health Ministry that all approvals are given. They can get donated vaccines, they can get commercial vaccines. It is all up to the company. They have to figure out the remaining, some of the official government procedures, but the basic license, the step 1 has been completed by the government's end. So rest of the logistics can be worked out between the company of Cipla as well as Moderna. But from the government's end, the clarity, the big yes, the big nod that was needed, that has arrived in 24 hours, which is very, very accelerated in nature in comparison to what other vaccine companies have faced in India in the past.
All right. Thanks, Sukirti, for joining us with that update. So India has, at least on paper, got its 4th coronavirus vaccine, the Moderna vaccine. It's an mRNA technology vaccine that has an efficacy of around 90%, and this of course is good news. But when will the vaccine be made available? How many doses of the vaccine will be made available? These are questions that still need to be answered. Let's get in a quick reaction from Dr. Anita Ramesh Chandra, specialist in clinical trials, joining us. Thanks so much, Dr. Chandra, for joining us. Your first reaction to Moderna getting the nod by the drug controller in India?
Yes, yes, it's quite expected. We are happy and excited as being a healthcare worker. I'm into this clinical trial for last 20 years in India. Over a period of time, the drug controller and the process is very robust. But now the situation is different. When I go for my cancer trial approvals, yes, it does take time. You need to complete phase 1, 2, 3, and sometimes even phase 4 to get approval. But situation is different. We are in a pandemic, and life saving is more important for us. And that's why emergency approval is needed. And more vaccines are needed. That's what I understand. And as you know, the virus is mutating. It was alpha, beta, delta. Now we have delta plus. It's changing its epitope. And so we need vaccines targeting different epitopes, producing different antibody. A cocktail of vaccine is what the world needs now. So we are all happy that Moderna has got its approval. As you know, it's an mRNA vaccine. The mRNA is a very small particle.
Yes.
It is very subjected to temperature, and at any temperature, even a little bit of agitation, it will break down. So we have to be very careful. Logistics has to be in place. How the cold chain has to be maintained. What I feel personally, it can be mainly used in the urban hospitals, where you have the real cold temperature maintained, and you have walk-in patients, so that open a vial, finish it completely, and then you go for the next vial.
Well, I think that's important perspective that you're giving us, because the government, of course, has said that an open vial can be stored under the 2 to 8 degree temperature, which is what we are currently using for both Covishield and Covaxin, for a period of a month. But what you're essentially saying is that cold chain management and transportation has to be done with a great degree of precision, which is why the Moderna could potentially only be available in urban India as and when it is made available. So that's a crucial point. Dr. Sarman Singh, the director of AIIMS Bhopal, also a senior virologist, joins us. Dr. Singh, the Moderna vaccine has shown an efficacy of over 90%. It's considered to be one of the more superior vaccines against COVID in the world. What more is known about the efficacy of the vaccine against the Delta or the Delta Plus variant, which is what we're dealing with here in India?
Yeah, as you very rightly said, that these are Pfizer and Moderna, the Moderna, to be very specific. This is the best efficacious vaccine as far as today is concerned in the world. And the only concern earlier was that, temperature was, minus 70. You need to transport it and maintain it. But of course, on the day of inoculation, it has to be opened and room temperature has to be maintained. And up to 7 days, definitely, it can be maintained in the refrigerator. But, as the time goes, obviously, efficacy might go down, but definitely up to 7 days, it can definitely retain its efficacy as normal. So
do you agree, though, Dr. Singh? Dr. Singh, do you agree with Dr. Chandra when she says that this vaccine, as and when it's made available, could potentially only be available to the urban pockets in the country that can maintain the kind of cold chain and logistics it needs?
Yeah, to some extent, yes, of course. But, if the transportation, our system is so robust, earlier, last year also this question came, and then, we had discussion that probably India is not that way so, poor in that, and we can definitely maintain the cold chain. And I would say that even the, air peripheral suburban area, what we call, we can cover using this, because, up to, as I said, that up to 7 days, normal temperature or refrigeration, which is, polio vaccine and all these things, we have the cold systems and boxes. So it can have, but obviously for long term for companies and where the warehouses are there, they will require, but not the vaccinators. Vaccinator will require only the cold boxes and, the packs only. So this should be a, I would say it can be a game changer. Yeah.
Okay, you're saying it could potentially be a game changer. Dr. Anita Ramesh Chandra and Dr. Sarman Singh, thanks so much for joining us with your initial reactions to the big story that we're tracking today, which is India's 4th COVID-19 vaccine. The Moderna vaccine has been given emergency use authorization, while of course we'll continue to track the details of when this vaccine will be made available in India and how many doses will be made available. It indeed could be a game changer.